feel like a superhero origin story.
You are. It really is. It's basically like everybody's kind of superhero origin story.
That's so cool.
There's so many like fun, interesting people. I figure let's start showcasing some of them. Okay, so I don't know you like super well. You're from Canada. That's all I know.
Yes,
that's more than
that's all you really need to. Oh, that's my alarm so that I wouldn't miss the thing today.
That's the 2-minute warning. So what? Okay, so first of all, why'd you come to New York? Let's just get that.
Okay, yeah. So I grew up in Canada. I left after high school, so I came to the United States for college, and then just never went back. And I went to college in Maine. So I went from like Toronto to Maine.
That's like Canada light, isn't it?
It was like easing your way into the US a little bit. In fact, Maine was probably colder, and I don't know if it was technically more north than where I was in Toronto, but it might be.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because that goes
Ontario kind of juts down a bit, and then Maine's kind of up. But it was definitely much more. It was snowier and colder than growing up in a city for sure. And then from Maine, I went to Boston, and then from Boston, I went to New York.
Okay, so just to track geographically, why Maine? Why college in the U.S.?
Oh God, it's so random. So I played hockey in high school, like every Canadian, and I was just good enough to delude myself into thinking I could get better and like, I don't know, keep playing for a while, which was a complete delusion. I was never like, I think there's something like very, like it's great if you play a sport at an above average level. It's great. You know, team sports, you learn about yourself, how to interact with people, how to be part of a team. I think it's a character builder. But then there's the people that are so good that, you know, from an early age, like, oh, they might go pro. Like they're just the 0.1%. And then there's everyone else who's in like the top quartile. And that's like the worst place to be, because it gives you just enough of a taste of being good at something to delude yourself and become obsessed. And then you'll just get disappointed because you're not actually good enough. And that was me. But so I had this fantasy about playing college hockey. And then that's why I ended up in Maine at a Division III school. So it wasn't like it was like D1. And then I only played for like 2 years, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't, you know, I was never going to get good enough to do anything with it.
So you think it's worse than being in like the top quartile than being like the worst at it?
Well, if you love it and you suck, that would be a bummer. But if you're like average and you love it, that's perfect, because you're not going to be delusional. Like I spent so much time and energy in high school and even into my like junior year of college, just thinking about like it was obsessive, and I enjoyed it, but like maybe there's some other things I could have spent time thinking about, read a few more books or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just okay. So problematic when you get so obsessed with something and want, like, it's one thing to be obsessed with something if you know you're never going to advance and it's just going to be like a lifelong passion or hobby. But when you become obsessed and you're fantasizing about like playing in the Olympics or winning the Stanley Cup or something, and there's just no reason to ever think you can, it's like, it's sort of like, you're spending all this time and energy in a very non-productive way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so was winning the Stanley Cup and playing in the Olympics like your two kind of like, maybe I'm good enough if I keep going?
Like as a kid, like it's funny because there's a certain age where you're like, you know, some people are late bloomers. Like I'm not there right now, but maybe if I get like, maybe I can keep getting better and get, you know, but then you get to a certain age, you're like, wait a second, if it hasn't happened by now, it's not going to happen.
Have you gotten to that age?
Almost. Yeah.
Do you still play?
What's that?
Do you still play?
I did for a while, like as an adult, but I haven't in a while now. Now I'm too afraid of getting hurt probably now, but
yeah.
Like in my early 30s, I kept playing for sure. It was fun. You know, you get to a point where like once a week was pretty cool. In New York, it's tough though. Lugging your You can play out there on Chelsea Piers out on the west side there, but
Oh yeah.
you got to like taking hockey equipment on a subway. It's just not fun.
Yeah.
And then
Or
you
you
got to
gotta
have
be
a
like,
place in your apartment to like hang it and let it dry. And it's a very stinky situation after you've played. You need a second apartment just to air out your equipment where no one has to
right.
live with it to really make it work.
I never thought about the dehydrating, like the drying out process.
Oh yeah,
about hockey gear.
Because like in the city, no, we don't have locker rooms. Like
Right.
Like if you had a house and you had like a unfinished basement where you could go hang sweaty, wet stuff, great. But no one wants that in their bathroom in New York, you know?
Yeah. Okay. That would be tough. All right. So Maine specifically for hockey, like that's what got you into Maine.
That was like I because it was a Division III school, I thought I had a chance to play, and I still was like, maybe I'll keep improving. And no one, like I didn't really know anyone that was going there except for one kid I ended up knowing. But like in Canada, you know, any of the big good schools in Ontario that I might have gone to, I would have known like 100 people.
Oh, really?
And for some reason, it appealed to me to like start fresh. And not that they were bad people or that I didn't want to be friends with them or anything. There's just something appealing about being able to reinvent yourself without any like high school baggage, which is also silly because everyone reinvented themselves in college anyway. It didn't matter. But that was, for some reason, I was running away from something, I guess.
Yeah, and you don't know that you're going to reinvent yourself when you're at that mindset in high school. I mean, all you're thinking is like, you know what? No one else is going there. This will be a new.
Yeah, I just wanted to be different. I think that's really like just to be different, not the same old thing. I don't know if I accomplished that or not, but
what kind of guy were you in high school? Like when you say you were different, what did you change from?
I don't know. I mean, I was pretty shy. And like I wouldn't say that I didn't fit in. The high school I went to, like there was definitely like the popular cool crowd, like every high school in recorded history. But I don't think our high school had as big a gap between those people and everybody else. And by the last few years of high school, it sort of felt like everyone kind of got along. It was an all boys school as well. So what that means, I'm sure there's a whole lot about that I could think about, but I was a little shy. So I just played hockey. That's all I did. That's all I really thought about. So there wasn't a lot of bandwidth for anything else. Which was, I don't know. I don't know what else people did. Like, you know, occasionally I'd see a movie or something, but mostly it was like practice and games and every day. It was like being an open micer where there's shit every day. Like every day at a certain point of the evening or late afternoon, like you go out and you open mic until you come home and go to bed. And then and then the next day, the same thing. And the only difference is I also did, you know, had high school on top of that. And instead of open mics, it was hockey, but games and practices. And I was on multiple teams. So sometimes it'd be like a practice and then a game right after.
Oh, wow.
And my poor mother had to drive me.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say my poor mother had to drive me all over the city at times to do these things.
Was that a lot even by Canadian standards, or was that normal?
It was pretty normal for people that were like, say, above average in skill level. It was just the way, I mean, it was just the way it worked. Like the minor hockey system was probably one of the more complicated organized. Like it probably rivaled the UN in terms of complication, the minor hockey system in Toronto. And the season like started around Labor Day and ended in May if your team did well. Like it was crazy.
Oh, geez.
And then on top of that, you'd also potentially play for your high school, which was a whole different like league.
Yeah.
But you did both. But a lot of people did both.
Jeez, that sounds like a job. Like even it sounds like a job just for a parent to lug you around.
Yes. And you know, sometimes parents get together and you do a little carpooling so they don't all have to drive everyone everywhere all the time. But then a lot of the parents actually want to see the games because, you know, they're also delusional that their kid is the next great thing. So they're just driving.
Okay, so Maine, and then what took you to Boston?
Oh yeah, so I was graduating from college and had no direction or desire to do anything whatsoever, but at some point realized, oh yeah, you got to do something. And this was back. I mean, this was. I don't think it was like pre-internet necessarily, but certainly not what it is today, right? So there was an on-campus career center. And so at some point I realized, oh shit, I need a job. So this is when you had to go get like the fancy paper and print your resume and fold it perfectly and put it in a fancy envelope. And then you go to the career center and you
thicker and everything.
Yeah. I mean, God, they have it so easy today. And then you just drop it in all these bins for these companies. And because the school was in Maine, most of the companies that were going to like pay any attention to it either randomly had an alumni somewhere or were in like Boston, Connecticut area. So I just, I found someone that like looked like me on paper and just applied to every job she applied to. Cause that's the amount of research I did. I was like, hey, we're both economics majors. We're both pretty smart. What did you? And I just applied to the exact same companies, and she got one job and I got another, and I just took the job, and it was in Boston. It's as dumb as that. There was no thought, and it was a consulting job. So I consulted.
Who was it with?
It's a company at the time. It was called Analysis Group Economics. It's still around. It may be like Analysis Inc. or something now. They may have rebranded slightly in the last 20 years, but still around, I think. In fact, a woman I started there with, so she graduated from a different school, but we met, like we were both part of that analyst class of 3 or 4 people or whatever they'd hired.
Right.
And she's still there, which is impressive because no one takes one
impressive
job for their whole career anymore, but
no.
So very impressive. She's still there.
Maybe clowns. That seems like a one job kind of thing. Like if that's your job, there's not a lot of things you can do with that.
That's a good point. They all start doing open mics probably at some point.
Yeah, true. Yeah. All right. So how long were you in Boston?
So I was in Boston. For like, it's okay. So very clearly, very early in this job, I realized, oh, I don't like having someone just like tell me what to do. I was not ready or mature enough for like an office environment whatsoever. And I got assigned to work for this. They had hired another senior guy who had just finished like his PhD in economics or something. So he was a senior statistics guy. And for some reason they assigned me to work with him. And he didn't really know what he was doing. He was also trying to figure out how to operate in like a corporation where it's, where the idea is to like make money and be part of the workforce, because he had been in an academic environment for so long. And he would give me these things to do, and I would go away and it would take me days to do them because I had to learn how to program in this statistical language and then run all these simulations and stuff. And I'd go back and give it to him, and it was meaningless. Like it meant nothing, didn't do anything, didn't like serve any real purpose. And so I just felt like I was spinning my wheels, and I was like, I hate this. And I didn't get a good like 6-month review because I hadn't done anything except stuff for this guy who didn't really know what he'd never had someone working for him before. So he didn't even know what to ask, it wasn't a good fit. And so I was like, I got to get out of here. And so I decided I should just go back to school and hide. And I ended up ultimately ended up in a master's in economics program at Tufts University.
Oh, okay.
So still in the greater Boston, Medford, Mass, technically, I guess, but based, still kind of contiguous with Boston. So I ran and hid in a master's program, got a master's in economics, and then tried the consulting thing again in a similar way.
You started off you got an econ degree, then you started off at a consulting firm.
Yes.
And you didn't really like it because you were kind of a glorified TA. And then you thought, I'll go back to get a master's degree in econ and then back into consulting.
Yeah. I think it's not that I thought I was a glorified TA, although I guess that's part of it. It's that like, I just wasn't doing well. And I didn't like that feeling of like, if I keep working for this guy, I'm just going to get fired eventually because we're not accomplishing anything.
Oh,
And it's not, and I don't like, and I don't know how to get out of this. Like
did he not have anyone telling him what to do?
well, he was like this senior hire, so I'm sure he had some leeway. And this was, this was like probably 4 or 5 months into both of our tenure at the company, which is still relatively new. So I'm sure at some point he must have had to like migrate into something that actually was helpful.
Right. Billable to the client.
And I'll bet you he did fine. For all I know, he's still there and just crushing it. I don't know. Super and very nice guy as well. But it was just, I was just spinning my wheels doing things for him that didn't seem to be like accomplishing anything. So it was very hard for him to say I was doing a great job, even though I was doing exactly what he was sort of telling me to do.
Yeah.
But in any event, and I didn't have knowing what I know now, there's a way to like go to managers and mentors and like, if you understand office politics and how to talk to people, you can figure those situations out. But at the time,
right,
like this is sort of my first real job. I didn't know how to get out of it other than leaving.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to do it. It's a way to do it. So
it's a way to do it.
You got a master's at Tufts.
So I got a master's at Tufts. And while I was there, I applied for some jobs. And one of them was a consulting firm that was actually a competitor of the firm I had been at before. And I got it in my head that I was so mad that I hadn't succeeded. I was like, I need to know that I can do this. So I'm going to go to the competitor or I'm going to apply and try to get a job at the competitor. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to do it right this time because I've learned from my mistake kind of thing. And they indeed did hire me. And I worked there for 2 years and it was great.
What was the competitor called?
It was called Charles River Associates at the time. I think it's now called Charles River International.
Okay. And was it all econ related consulting?
Yeah. These were like economic consulting firms, or at least that's what I was doing there, where like there'll be some like highfalutin economics guru, like a Harvard professor, an MIT professor that gets hired in like a legal situation to be an expert witness in like an economic case, and they have an army of consultants running the numbers for them, helping them, not write the reports because ultimately it's their report, but they're not the one sitting at the typewriter, and they're not the one running the models. They're just sort of orchestrating it. And there's like a handful of consulting firms in the background on all those things.
Okay. All right. So Charles River.
Yep.
And then, and you're still in Boston. And then what? Where'd you go from there?
Well, then it became clear. Then, and after a little while there where I felt like, oh, okay, I understand how to function in an office and I can be I can do well, whatever that means. And I went into my second year there, but then I realized that, okay, and just stop me if this is like too technical or boring, but, I was like, oh, the way this type of company works, like the head honcho is the professor who's the expert economist guy. Even the consultants that are doing very, very well, they can never be that guy or woman because they don't have the PhD and the CV of published articles about some nuanced corner of economics that make them an expert. So you can do well financially, but you're never the person. And everything we're doing is about something that happened years in the past. And then there was like some legal issues and then the lawsuit. And it's not even in court yet. Now it's people fighting about what happened. And eventually at some stage, they hire experts to talk about like why Microsoft is a monopoly or whatever it is, which is one of the famous cases that had taken place at these firms, like just before I showed up. But, I was like, oh, but this finance stuff is kind of fun. So I should go be like a finance guy. That's what I should do.
Okay. So
I saw a couple other. Yeah, go ahead.
You got you got exposure to finance stuff in this econ role.
Yeah. I ended up doing I was doing a lot of like valuation work.
Okay.
And I ended up like learning how to value things. So building spreadsheets to tell you what something's worth. And I was like, oh, you can make a lot more money and you can do this more like real time instead of something that happened 5-10 years ago by going into banking or finance or investing or something. But to do that, you got to probably got to get an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
So I should go back to school for finance.
Is that what you did?
I did. And I went to MIT because that's the first place that comes to everyone's mind when they think finance.
Finance. Yeah, of course.
I'll go to MIT. So I went to MIT and got a master's. And then from there, once you're at MIT, like, you know, most of the big name firms that everyone's heard of recruit from MIT. So I managed to get myself a summer internship at Goldman in New York. I went in the summer of 2002. So I remember going down to New York from Boston to like interview and stuff for summer internships, and the Ground Zero was still on fire, and I'm running around, lower Manhattan trying to talk to bankers and finance people.
What was that like being there right then?
It was crazy, especially the first until March 2020. It was the first time I'd seen everyone wearing masks, because a lot of people in lower Manhattan were wearing the surgical masks because there was still like dust and stuff in the air. You know, this was like, this was probably October, November 2001 when you're recruiting for jobs for that following summer.
And they were already doing that like there? They'd kicked it up that quickly?
Well, what I realized, yes and no. So after 9/11, like the recession caused by like the explosion of the internet bubble had already existed right before 9/11, but then that just created a second sort of drawdown and a lot of pressure on the economy. And so it was like full scale recession. A lot of companies weren't hiring or weren't going to hire that many. And since I had decided what I wanted to do, I kind of like talked to some people. I was like, how do you get one of these jobs? And they just walked me through like their experiences, except their experiences were like pre 9/11. Like it was right when things were kind of working, but I kind of created this playbook for myself. So I was up in Boston, and this is October, November 2001, and every Thursday night, after my last class, I'd hop on a train to New York, crash on a buddy's couch, get up Friday morning, like drink a pot of coffee, and just go from bank to bank, financial institution, and try to drag anyone out that would come and sit down with me for 20 minutes and just talk to me about what they did. Sort of like informational interviews. And I just tried to meet everybody. And
how did you do? I mean, like, what did you do? Just walk into the bank and say, hey,
you'd email them or call them beforehand. And you just be like, I'm going to be there Friday. Can you come out for coffee? And some would be like, well, maybe, or they're like, oh, well, call me when you're here. And then I would show up. And I'd go to every alumni of MIT that was there, because there's this alumni database, so you can find them. Yeah. So then they feel a little bit guilty, like they want to. And then a lot of these big banks and things have like a recruiting team for every major school they recruit at. So part of they don't have to, but you could go after them. And all the interviews would take place in January. Like there was some deadline where you submitted your resume. And then in January, there was a week where there were no classes and it was just summer internship interviews. And by the time that week rolled around, when I got interviews at all the major banks, and the first round interviews, every time I walked into a room, I'd already had coffee with everyone in the room.
Oh, really?
So I'd walk in for my first round interview. I'd be like, oh, hey, Dan. Hey, Susan. How you guys doing? Good to see you again. How's the kids? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, so the first round interviews were not easy, but went very well because I knew everybody, which was the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah.
The point was to know them and to show them that like I was serious, and then that gets you to the first round. Then you get to the next round, and then it's more senior people that you've never seen before. And then you're on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Where did you come up with this idea to drag everybody out for information?
It was funny. A guy I had met at Charles River he'd gone to Columbia Business School. So and he'd done the same thing a year or two before me, except he was already in New York. So it was easy for him. He just hopped on the subway, but he told me what he did. And I was like, fine, that's what I'll do. I'll just have to come from Boston every week. So it was brutal. I mean, it was a couple months there that were just like, it was intense. Cause I was missing some classes every once in a while on Friday, or there weren't like, I think Fridays, I don't know if we didn't have class or if they were more like these study sessions and labs and things, but I would miss some stuff Friday, but it worked out because I ended up getting a good summer job. It turned into a full-time job.
And how, just so I can get this through my head, how many trips did you make down for those informational interviews?
Oh, probably like a dozen.
Oh man.
It was every week for months. And sometimes like people wouldn't come. Maybe sometimes I never had a trip where no one would come out, but there was a couple trips where I could only get one person.
Okay.
And then there's a couple where I probably got 4 or 5 and I'm running around.
Yeah. And that's hustle, man. That's pretty good. I mean, like even in hindsight, you don't hear about that much gumption really.
Well, and it worked, and it created, there was some fun. There's some interesting moments. Like, and I also was forming an opinion about like who I liked. And like how, and trying to be like, okay, so I've met 6 bankers from Lehman Brothers, RIP Lehman Brothers, but, and I liked them all. So that gives me like, if that's representative of the culture there, I guess maybe I'd fit in. And I was trying to figure all that out as well. And then of course it just depends on who actually hires you, or makes you an offer. And then between that, you're reading like you're doing the coursework and stuff for the masters, but then I was also just reading a ton of books on like interviewing at banks and interviewing at hedge funds and what kind of questions are they going to ask. And I was doing mock interviews with I found like the core group of people that all wanted these jobs, and we would interview each other and we would be just vicious, and rip each other apart. But that would prove to be very, very helpful when the real interviews rolled around.
Would it really?
Oh yeah. Because none of the interviews were as bad as what we did to each other.
What would you guys do?
Like interrupt people, call them out on like a detail that wasn't fleshed out. We were all reading. I mean, many of us were reading the same books about these interviews and like the horror stories. So just recreating some of those.
Yeah.
I try to think of a good specific example. But just being really, really mean. It's like, how do you someone's like, so why do you think you'd be a valuable member of our team? And the person, which is such a generic interview question, right? And the person answers is like, really, that you think we value that? And he's like, or be more specific, or why do you think that makes you useful? Like just whatever you could think of in the moment to push the person. And then it's almost like doing improv around an interview topic. And then you stumble across a really cool answer and you remember what you said in case you can get to a similar place in the real interview. Cause then you're going to sound really smart.
Did that help?
Oh,
you? Like,
I think it definitely helps because you'd gone through down so many different paths in these fake interviews and then found some interesting things and sort of you realize what's interesting about yourself a little bit, or how you, and you could, you'd use them again.
What came out of that? Like what
was crowd
interesting? Yeah, that's true.
Well, just like how certain things applied. Like I found like one of the things I ended up talking about, which I discovered from these crazy mock interviews, was one of the things about working in economic consulting was like, in theory, any work you did could end up in court. So like you needed to be very organized, and you needed to follow certain like processes, so that like there couldn't be mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the expert witness is on actually goes to court and testifies, and they're like, what's the answer to blah, blah, blah. And they're like 12. And then the other side goes, actually it's 11.9 and shows why. Then you're expert, you're done. You're toast. It's over. So that attention to detail of knowing that every equation you're solving, every spreadsheet you're building, if it's wrong, could destroy everything. The bankers love that kind of stuff. Yeah, because that's what they're thinking. It's like, we're doing these huge deals that are so important, mergers and acquisitions, and the numbers have to be right. So it's like, oh yeah, I know, and I know what that pressure feels like.
So then, okay, how long were you got it? You got the internship at Goldman and that converted to a full-time gig.
Yeah. So I started full time in like August 2003, probably. Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. It was intense. Like if getting the job was like a process of sort of intense dedication, actually doing the job, whoo, it's I don't even know how to describe it. Like it's all you do.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like I got to work probably between 8:30 and 9, and everyone wasn't there till about 10. And I was there on average probably till between like 2 and 3 a.m.
That leaves no time for a life.
Yeah. And the difference on like a Saturday is maybe I wouldn't go until noon. You know, and
Really?
yeah. And then, you know, there's some travel on top of that, but all the travel, most of the travel, well, not most, but if you can do it as a day trip, it's a day trip. But that just means you're leaving at like 3 or 4 in the morning because you're the one that has to make sure everything's ready for the meeting. And then a car's picking you up at home at 2 hours later to take you to LaGuardia to fly to Chicago for an hour and a half meeting and then back. And when you land back at LaGuardia at 4 p.m., you don't go home. You go right back to the office for the next thing. So, you know, doing that week after week, that just, it's an exercise in what hard work actually is.
Yeah, that would be. I can't remember the last time I
And
ever did that.
working, you know, trying to get things done when you just get really run down and tired.
How would you continue working when you were run down and tired?
You just, I don't know, you find a way. It's interesting. Like there are things I did that, you know, some people talk about like, oh, I ran a marathon when I was 22. And you think about it and you're like, I know that I did that, but I can't imagine myself doing it. Like, I know I did it. I know I accomplished it, but it seems like impossible. Like, I feel that there was a couple, like I remember there was like a 4-day stretch once where I think I slept for 2 hours and I only went home to shower and change my clothes for 4 days. And I can't imagine, I don't understand how I did that, but I did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, that's weird.
Yeah, I don't think I didn't have too many work experiences like that, but I remember, you know, as like a teenager or something, you stay up like 24, 36 hours just because you can. And I can't imagine doing that now, but like, I remember doing it at one point. Can't imagine.
It's weird. And it's also like, it's not just you, like at 1 a.m. on the floor and where I was for most part was like kind of an open floor plan with like cubes that were like low. So you could see everybody. Mm-hmm. And you look around at 1 o'clock, there's still 30 people working. It's not like you're by yourself at 1 a.m. There's always company. And there's a culture of like, there's sort of a perverted pride of working hard, which is no accident that it creates that. Cause that's how you get people to, I mean, it's absurd. Like that, there's no reason for that per se, other than that's just how it works. Like you could hire more people, everyone could work less and make less money, and we, in theory, but that's not how it works. And there was this weird pride, like when something would happen and it'd be 11 at night, and you're like, I think I have everything done. I could just get out, I could just leave, and then you're like, but I don't want everyone to see me leave at 11 because it looks like I'm not in demand. Like, you know, it looks like I'm doing something wrong, but it's 11 at night. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like a competition. It's like, let's see who can stay the latest. It's all optics at that point.
Yeah, who breaks first kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a giant game of chicken.
Yeah. And people would do the craziest things. Like there was a guy I knew, he had his screensaver, he changed it to like an Excel spreadsheet that looked half finished. He had a pair of glasses, an extra pair of glasses to leave on his desk and an extra blazer to leave over his chair. And then he'd sneak out like he was going to the bathroom and he'd go home. But he would create this, no one would know quite when he left because it looked like he had just stepped out for a second, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And everyone had their own little version of that because it was or you got that last email to send, but you go home and you wait and then you log in from home and you send it right before you go to bed. So it looks like you worked an hour more than you did. Like just dumb stuff like that serves no purpose other than creating the illusion that you're working slightly harder when you're already working like an insane amount, which is bizarre. But
do you think it ever paid off? Like, do you think somebody in management ever thought, oh, wow, that guy's a hard worker. He's sending an email at midnight?
no, because I think that if they got the email at midnight, they're like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. And if they'd gotten it at 11 instead of midnight, they wouldn't have even cared. Yep, got it. Good.
Yep.
I think a lot of it was, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I think a lot of it was fabricated, like in our own imaginations.
Yeah. The pressure. Yeah. Does it? Well, you can't even ask. You can't like talk to management about it. Like, hey, is it cool if we all just agree like to get out of here at 8? Yeah. No, not happening. And we're back. All right. Let me move that there. Okay.
Perfect spot for a commercial.
Exactly. We'll see you after the commercial break.
Brought to you by
we're
Blue
back
Chew.
with Adam Muller. Okay, so how long were you at Goldman?
I was at Goldman from summer 2002, and then full time 2003 till 2010. Okay. Yeah, like August 2010, I think is when I left. And I left to start a little hedge fund.
Wait, hold on. That's something you don't hear people say frequently. I left to start a hedge fund.
Yes.
Why?
It's a good question. I felt like I'd wanted to leave a little earlier than that. Like the thing about, this could be true of other banks, but my experience was at Goldman. But you used to hear people say like you only get to leave Goldman once, and so it's like a sort of a powerful move because people like the brand and it sounds good. They like hiring people from Goldman, so you want to make sure you maximize the value you get for that. And I'd wanted to leave like 2007-ish, but two things were happening. One is I was being sponsored for my green card, so I needed to wait for that. Because if I left before that came through, then it's, I'd have to start all over again. And there's a lot of value as a Canadian. There's a lot of value in having a green card because then you have much more freedom. Excuse me. But then when my green card came through in like July 2007. And things were already starting to happen where you could tell that the financial world was about to explode. So I knew.
Really?
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know what was going to happen exactly, but there was, these Bear Stearns hedge funds that owned some of this crazy mortgage stuff were starting to be in the news and having problems, and you just felt it. Because things were. 2007 was insane in terms of like the deal making and what was happening in the stock market. And you just knew it was about to blow up in some way. So it seemed like a bad time to be the new guy somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I didn't leave then. And then in early 2009, I thought about leaving again, but that was kind of like the trough of the financial crisis.
Right.
And I had made it through without getting fired. And a lot of people just got fired and I had kept my job. So I sort of was convinced myself to wait one more year.
Why do you think you kept your job?
Honestly, I think a lot of us were interchangeable in terms of like, for the most part, in terms of like work product, and people were, there was a lot of vice presidents that were smart and good and capable. And I think, honestly, I think people liked me and I was funny.
Okay.
And it was just like the people liked having me around more than some of the other people. So when there was like 10 people and they're like, okay, pick the 3 you want to keep. And literally, okay, there's 2 that are easy. There's 2 that seem subpar in terms of the quality of their work. So that's easy. But then we got to pick another 5. Here's 5 let's just take the 3 that are kind of fun to be around, kind of thing. That's just a loose guess. But yeah, I mean, it was brutal. The kind of layoffs that occurred through that. And then after keeping the job, I was like, I think I should probably wait for another year and a half. It's a hard place to leave, especially once you've been there for that long, because there's a lot of benefits of just sticking around. Sort of there's a survival benefit in that job, because most people peel out after 2 or 3 years because it's just too much. So
was there a lot of hiring going on elsewhere, or was it like, did you have an opportunity, or was it just safe to stay? Was it just better off staying at Goldman?
Well, I felt like, well, I mean, I'd get calls from headhunters a few times, like once a quarter or something, just asking me if I was happy, because a lot of people would leave Goldman, and if they weren't happy, if they didn't get promoted or they weren't happy with their pay or whatever it was, the first thing to do would just be to hop to another bank.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of that. There was a lot of like lateral moves between banks that would go on, especially when times were good and banks were busy. Because if you could bring someone in that knew what they were doing, when you had too much deal flow to deal with your existing, bankers, you just needed bodies that knew how to do this stuff, that could block and tackle and get an M&A deal done or whatever it was. Hiring someone from another bank, and you just guarantee, and it would be like, oh, we'll guarantee you this amount of money for 2 years or for 3 years or whatever it is, and those can be pretty enticing. So that caused some movement for sure.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, I wasn't going to leave Goldman to go to another bank. That didn't really appeal to me, because then I'm just going to have to go somewhere else and be the new guy and work even harder, even if it's theoretically for more money. Like, what is it? Like, how much more is it really over a couple of years? And if I'm going to leave, it's going to be something different that I want to do. At least that's what I told myself. It's also like, it's such a pain in the ass leaving.
Yeah.
Like, know everybody, you like them, they like you. You kind of have a nice little thing going. You know how to work the system a bit, because part of survival is just figuring out how to cut corners and having no one care or notice.
Yep, that's true. Just seeing what you can get away with.
Yeah, because you come up with little tricks to survive. Like, you get to a point where you have, like, maybe you're covering your own clients and you're busy, and like one morning you wake up and you just feel like crap because you haven't slept in a week. And you just set your alarm for noon and you go back to sleep, knowing that you've been around long enough that everyone's going to assume you have a client meeting that morning. And then at noon, you roll into the office looking, in a nice suit, looking fresh as a daisy, carrying your briefcase. No one knows,
right,
that you thought you were going to die 4 hours later and you just needed to sleep, because you've earned that right over, years of abuse. But you don't tell anyone you felt you were sick or slept in. You just let them believe what they're going to believe.
Exactly. Yeah. I used to be a recruiter, and I'd schedule like late breakfast meetings and then like late coffee or early drinks meetings, so that I could just squeeze the amount of time I had to be in the office.
They had nap rooms where you'd go, and it looked like a room on like a submarine or something. It was like a cot and an alarm clock in a room barely bigger than the cot. And you'd go in, you'd make sure no one was looking. You'd sneak in, you'd shut the door, set the alarm for like 40 minutes and just take a power nap. Get up, unwrinkle yourself and go back to your desk.
You still wanted to make sure nobody saw you enter, even though
you didn't want anyone to know you did it. Like, they could think you're going for a cup of coffee or you're doing whatever, and you just catch a nap, because sometimes you just need to.
Was the guy with the extra glasses and the blazer you?
No. I was just there long enough. I didn't need, like, late enough. Most of the time I didn't need to bother with that.
Yeah. Okay. So you left to start a hedge fund.
Yes.
First of all, where'd you get that idea? Why, what on earth made you think, yeah, I'm going to
that was like, there was a hot period of time there where a lot of new hedge funds were cropping up, and smart people that knew what they were doing could make a lot of money. I liked it seemed interesting to me. I knew a few analysts from Goldman had left to go work at hedge funds, and I was still in touch with them, and what they were doing seemed so much more interesting than what I was doing at that point. And the longer I stayed around at Goldman, the more senior I got, the harder it was to switch like job functions within finance. So before I left to start my own, I made some phone calls and I talked to some like hedge fund people. And because I was a vice president at Goldman, it was amazing how many people would like take my calls and talk to me. And I talked to people that like luminaries in the hedge fund industry. It'd be like the equivalent, literally the equivalent. If I was just like a comic, I'm just going to give Louis C.K. a call and ask him for some advice. Like literally that level of person in the hedge fund world. And like, they basically all told me the same thing, which we had good conversations. They were very nice. They're small firms. Like they don't hire that many people, and they don't hire senior people. Really. They hire very junior people to do all the work. And they're like, you're sort of one guy described me as like a half ripe banana. It's like, you're not like a new banana, but you're not a ripe banana. And I don't need half ripe bananas. And I was like, I guess I understand. But
Wait, what would he have done with a ripe banana that he couldn't do with a half ripe banana?
I don't know, because I make banana bread, I guess. But that's like a bruised banana. But it was like I was too senior for them to trust me. As like I was trying to make the argument, hire me the way you'd hire someone that was like junior, and I'll prove myself. And they wouldn't go for it. Because they're like, we've been down this road before, and we don't, you're just too, you've aged out of like the way we hire people. So then I was like, okay, so if I want to do this, I just have to do it. I have to do it on my own. It's like putting out a YouTube special, and I did.
Yeah. What was that like?
It was fascinating. I mean, it was more stress than anything, because it's all on you. So I went out and I raised a little bit of money so you're also investing other people's money, which is like, if something goes dramatically wrong, that's going to be a bad phone call to make. And you have to put most of your own savings in, because why would anyone trust you with their savings if you're not risking all of your own?
Right.
And I was like, fine. So I did that. And my theory was that I was going to be good at it, which was just pure instinct. But that if I did it for a few years, all of a sudden, instead of being a half ripe banana, I was someone that actually knew what they were doing. Like, it's almost like a proof of concept. And then maybe someone would hire me. Like, my view is either my fund will turn into something big enough and sustainable enough that it could become like a real thing, and scale up, or it's a proof of concept. And then I'll find a job like with someone else, and I'll have 3 years of data to show them about how well I did, but at sort of subscale, because you're not going to raise like $1 billion or something out of the gate. Like,
right.
I was raising hundreds of thousands at the beginning, not millions even, which sound like big numbers, but they're not in that context. And I did it for it took 2.5 years for someone to come calling and say like, hey, and it was a guy I used to work with at Goldman who had left and ended up at this investment management company in Southern California, and was in New York for an investment conference, meeting with companies and stuff. And it was like, hey, do you want to grab coffee? Oh, by the way, how's your fund going? Like, we're looking to grow. Any interest in? I was like, yeah, let's chat. And ended up going to work 6 months later. I was moving to Southern California and working for them. So it sort of worked, kind of, in that sense.
Okay, so this took you to SoCal. How long were you down there?
I was there for 4 years in the Newport Beach area of Southern California.
It's gorgeous down there, isn't it?
That was some good living. Yeah. It had its own challenges though, because the job that I took was I was helping them grow this global equities business, which meant you invested in companies worldwide. So I would have to get to work at like 4:30 in the morning, so that I could talk to Europe while it was still, noon in England and early afternoon in Germany. And then, in Southern, 6:30 in the morning is when like the New York Stock Exchange would open when you're in California.
Right.
And then work all day. And then if I wanted to talk to people in Asia, I'd have to do it at night from home to talk to people. So it was a bit of a weird sort of 24-hour a day job, sort of. But getting up at 4 every morning for 4 years was a different kind of challenge. But you didn't really work. I didn't work much on like anything I did on weekends. I generally did from home, or if I went to the office, it was very casual versus banking. Yep. So it definitely wasn't the same intensity, but the hours were strange.
Okay. Where did you live in Newport?
I lived over those 4 years. I think I had two different apartments, but I lived like a 5-minute drive from the office, like just off the Pacific Coast Highway near the beach.
Okay.
There's huge upsides to living in New York, but just in terms of like sort of a nice, peaceful, fun place to live, it's hard to imagine anything better than that.
No, yeah, I agree. My wife, we lived in Irvine for a little bit.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
and then my parents lived in Newport Beach and Corona Del Mar. Now they're down in Dana Point.
Yes. I was in Corona Del Mar on
Oh, great. Okay, yeah.
Orchard Avenue, just a couple blocks from the Pacific Coast Highway.
Oh man, that's a
So I could just
sweet
walk
spot.
down to Corona Del Mar Beach. It was like 5 blocks or something. It was great.
God. And then did you come to New York from there? I mean, or back to New York, I guess.
Yeah. Then what happened? We actually did very well in the business we were building, but they decided the company had a leadership change, decided they didn't want to grow that business anymore, and in fact, kind of shut it down.
The global equities.
Yeah, because it was
Yeah.
more of a bond shop, huge fixed income bond investment firm that was trying to grow equities. And then they thought, no, we don't need to do that. So they closed it down, sort of. They kind of automated part of it, shut it down. And I was like, well, I should probably move back to New York because that's where most of the finance jobs are. But then I ended up moving back to New York and doing comedy instead. That's where the comedy
Okay.
comes in.
Yeah. So now this is why. Okay, wait. Did you move to New York first, or did you decide I'm going to do comedy first?
I moved to New York. Well, I spent a little time in California, like looking for a job from there for a bit. But there's just
Okay.
it's a pretty there's a few little places. There's one or two large asset managers in LA. There's a couple smaller places like tucked away in like Laguna and stuff, but they don't, there's these great firms that hire someone like one person every 3 years kind of thing. And they just weren't hiring. And there's such a concentration of jobs in New York in theory that I was like, all right, I looked, I spent 12 months looking in California. And then I'll just move back to New York and look from there. Cause there's just more stuff. And I did that, but then I never ended up taking a job. So I moved back to get a finance job, you could say, and then didn't.
Yeah. How and why did you decide? When, how, and why did you decide you're going to give comedy a shot?
Oh, it's funny. So I moved back and I was looking for a job, and I was like, someone pointed out that you can't look for a job like for 12 hours a day. There's only so many, you've got your resume, you're writing cover letters, you're making phone calls and stuff, but there's only like at some point you've exhausted every opportunity you found that day and you need to do something else as well. So I thought like, what can I do that it would be fun for me that I would never have an opportunity to do? So I took a screenwriting class.
Oh,
and that was super fun. And when I was like halfway through that, I was like, I still have time in the day. So I took a stand-up comedy class, so pretty standard, right? Like once a week you go to class, everyone does 4 or 5 minutes, teacher gives you feedback. And at the end of 6 weeks, you do a show. And I took the class where the show was at Caroline's. And there was, because of some scheduling issue between the last class and the class show, there was like a 3 or 4 week gap for whatever reason. And I was like, well, I can't not, and you're only going to class once a week. I was like, I can't not do this and then try to do a show in 4 weeks. That'll be a brutal, right? Which it would probably be anyway. But so I was like, I better try some open mics. And then within a few days, I was like, okay, now I just need to do open mics every day. And then I just stopped looking for a job.
What went through your mind when you're like, maybe I'll try stand-up comedy? What was it but right before that thought?
Oh, but if there's something terrifying about it. And like, if I'm ever, like I've given presentations to CEOs and board of directors about like $1 billion deals. And there was a level of nervousness about that. And I thought, it would be even more nerve wracking if I had to try to make them laugh. Like that seems like if I can try to make people laugh, whether it works or doesn't, and I'm okay with it, I'll never be nervous about another presentation again. That was kind of more of like, it's almost like I thought of it as like taking a public speaking class in a way.
Yeah.
And I was just sort of curious, like, am I funny? Like, can I be funny. Because I kind of thought I was like, it's one thing to be like workplace funny or have a sharp wit or a quick mind to make a funny pun in the context of like working. Especially when it's 2 a.m. and everyone's been there for 2 days straight. If you can be the guy that hits a zinger and everyone laughs and relieves some of the tension, it's great. But can you do that kind of on command and repeat that again and again and still do it? And so I was sort of curious.
Had you ever wanted to do stand-up before, or was this just like a first time, like maybe I'll try that?
It's interesting. I think it never occurred to me to try it. It never occurred to me that you even could. And I don't remember the exact moment or stimulus that made me think of it, but I remember sitting in an office and like Googling stand-up comedy, like something triggered my brain. And I just thought, I wonder if there are classes about stand-up comedy. And I Googled it and there was. And I was like, wow, so anyone can just do this. And as soon as that occurred to me, I was like, well, I have to do it. But I didn't think that I had to do it until I knew that it was like possible. Like I wasn't like all my life, I'd love to try stand up, but I just don't have the courage. It was like, it wasn't even a thought. It wasn't that it's like, I don't know. I never even thought about how do these people get into it? How do you do it? Right. I was just like, it's just not something that I'd ever considered. And then as soon as I realized you could, I had to.
So how did the first show go?
At the time, it felt great. But I don't know if I still have it. I got like a DVD of it or something. So I have seen it and it's brutal. I mean, but that's through the lens of having done it so many more times since then. But it was funny because like there was this delay until the show, and then something came up for me where I had to miss the show. So instead of performing with the class, I got rescheduled to like a standard new talent night.
Okay.
Which meant there were people that had done it instead of the class of everyone doing it for the first time. There was some people there that had done it before. Which seemed even more terrifying somehow. But I look, when I saw it on, I look very nervous and uncomfortable. But you know, some people laughed out of sympathy or kindness, or maybe it was a little funny.
Yeah.
I had one joke that was a really good, there was one joke that was a really good joke. Unfortunately,
what was it?
Unfortunately, it's a reference that I don't think people get as much anymore, but it was a very well written joke. And the teacher pointed that out. She was surprised that I had written it. But it was a good joke. I remember the joke. The joke was, okay. The joke was, you know how they say if you sleep with a person, you're sleeping with everyone they've ever slept with, and everyone, the people they've slept with have slept with. So I guess that means we've all slept with Kevin Bacon. And that was 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon was at its peak at the time, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, it was a well-written little joke. It's not the best joke in the world, but you know.
Yeah.
But that's the one I remember. I remember some of the other ones, but I'm not going to dare repeat them.
So the first show, were you hooked? Like, I got to do this again. Was it the worst experience of your life? Like, what was that like getting up?
Yeah, something happened where I had to do it again. I think it was one of those, you know, I think I would actually relate it back to, I've never thought about it like this before, but this is exactly it. It was like the first consulting job and the second consulting job. Like the second time I was like, I got to do this again because I have to figure out how to do it right and succeed at it. But that first time, like that was rough. So I think I felt like, oh, now that I've done it once and I know how it works, if I just do it, this next time won't feel nearly as uncomfortable. Because I'll know even just things like, how do you walk to the stage? Like, how do you, you know, knowing what it's going to feel like looking out over a bunch of people that are staring at you, waiting for you to say something. Like you've gone through, you know, doing it once is infinitely more than doing it, having done it 0 times, you know? So
right.
That second time is now, you know, obviously you're far from you got a long way to go, but it's so much better than the first, just in terms of knowing what's going to happen, good or bad. And so I was like, I got to do this. And then, you know, you do that one, you're like, oh, the third time. Now I really, Because it's I think I probably have a pretty analytical mind. So each time I'm like, oh, okay. If I hadn't done that, it would have gone way better. It's like, each time fixing one thing, like a golf swing or something.
Right.
But you want to go back and do it again as soon as possible.
Now, like your first consulting job and second consulting job, did you go back into school or a class in between the two, or did you just go straight into open mics?
Yeah, I took the same class again immediately.
Okay, all right.
So I was doing the open mic. I was doing open mics on my own, but then I also just for 2 or 3 class sessions, I just kept taking the same. I think I took it 3 or 4 times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like as soon as the one, I just enrolled in the next one.
Did you develop new material each time, or was it honing the existing stuff?
It was mostly new because a lot of that existing stuff was trash for like the first year. I think it was just new stuff because I was still trying to figure out how to write a joke and what to talk about. Like that Kevin Bacon thing is fine, but it's not about me. It's a pretty generic thing that anyone could tell. Not that they'd want to, but but yeah, I think there's that stage of where you're just sort of discovering what to talk about and how to do it. And then you start to lock in on some topics that you're like, oh, I need a joke about that. Or I want a joke about that. I want a joke about that. And then you just start hammering on those like themes and ideas and try to build jokes that then last a lot longer because, you're starting to figure out to me, I know it's not even like, oh, what's your voice or what's your persona, but it's just like, there's a formulaic aspect to it, particularly when you're new, where if you watch 100 late night sets and there's certain things people talk about that make sense when no one knows who you are, to have a joke about where you were born kind of just makes sense. So I was like, okay, yeah. I'll write one of those and I'll keep going until I have something that I like. Like I should have a joke about being from Canada because I'm not in Canada. Seems like a pretty obvious thing to mention and stuff like that, or it was very like methodical in a sense. And then it just took a while to get jokes that would work well enough in those categories while also just like free writing and trying to discover other interesting things to talk about. But
okay. So now that we're in the comedy side of things, like how do you come up with new material? How do you decide what to write now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because sometimes that's a real struggle, but there's still some of that like blocks of material that like I should have more on. Like I've probably got 90 seconds that I like about getting a master's at MIT. Like, why can't that be 5 minutes? It can. It's just a matter of finding like angles and things to talk about that are both funny and relatable that people can understand. Or Canada, or whatever. And then whatever other like family is. There's things people talk about. Where you're from. Like you have the jokes about being Italian, right? And
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you should be talking about that. I should be talking about being growing up in Canada. And so sometimes I'll just think of a period in my life. I'll just like pick an age. I'll be like, okay, 10 years old. What grade was I in? What was happening? There's no reason that I shouldn't have a joke about being that age. And I should have a joke. Like there's some like funny stuff is happening to everyone all the time. It's just a matter of finding it. So there's that element of it. Sometimes I just kind of free write until something pops into the pen that is of interest. But I do write with I try to make it about me if I can, because I think it's more useful. And if there's an observation that turns into a joke, great. But that's more just like if I see a news article or I see something and I understand immediately what's funny to me about it, I'll write it down and try and turn it into a joke. But I don't actively look for those things in the same way that I actively try to just think about experiences that have had or am having that are interesting and could be funny in some way.
Yeah.
And then what's the angle that makes it like that where you can have a turn and a surprise and actually get a laugh?
Yeah. How do you physically write it out, pen and paper? Or are you a computer guy, or how do you come up with stuff?
I do both.
Okay.
I like switching it up. So sometimes sometimes I just like the feel of typing. I Other times I do like to just free write with a pen. But as soon as something turns into something even remotely resembling a joke, I do like to type it. One, because I like the way then I can sort of see it in a very clear way on the screen and figure out where it's going or, what I'm trying to say. And then also it's like, then I'm not going to lose it because it goes into the cloud or whatever. And it's like it's a kind of archive, and I can find it again by searching key terms and stuff. So it's like once it feels like, oh, this could be something, I want to type it somewhere because then I just feel like I've got it. But sometimes I'll still go back with old jokes that I've already typed in, and I'll just start writing them on a piece of paper, trying to see if something else occurs to me. Or I'll go and I'll grab the mic and I'll just say it out loud to the blank wall as if someone's listening and see if I stumble across a different path or idea that somehow connects. And that happens a lot. And then I run back to the desk and I start writing it down because I was like, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy to me how often the act of movement will jar loose something else. Like I run through my material in the shower and I'm just talking to myself out loud. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that's a different angle. I didn't think about that. And then I've got these little notes that I jot stuff down on, but that wouldn't happen if I was just sitting here, at least for me.
Well, I think a lot of people think of things in the shower. I don't think it's the water as much as it's just that you're standing up and you're focused on something else as well. I also get a lot when I just go for a walk.
Yeah.
If I go for a walk with no destination or purpose, every 100 feet, I have to stop and type something into my phone so I don't forget it. Because I'll just go for a walk and I'll start telling myself my jokes, and then I'll go off on some tangent, and then all of a sudden I'm writing stuff down.
Yeah, it's
or
almost
I'll listen to something, and it'll start getting the brain firing, and you start thinking of these things that you just and I think it's because you're walking and moving around, and then once you have them, I can sit down at the desk and try to hammer it out into a joke.
Right.
But that initial thought is hard to come at when you're just sitting there.
Yeah, it's almost like you hear this story about Michelangelo. He didn't have he was just trying to chip away the rock, so that he could free David.
Oh wow.
It's almost the difficulty, I think, is coming up with that chunk of rock in the first place for us. But I always think about when you're walking without a destination, you almost find yourself like, oh, I've got this now. I've got a chunk of rock in my hand. Now I can go take it back to the desk and whittle out something that makes sense.
And once you have that rock, once you have that rock once you have that idea, then there's that's the sort of the craft of how to design it into something that you think people, when you say it, people will understand what that original thought was, and they'll follow it. And then there'll be some catalyst for a laugh.
Yeah.
Which, and sometimes you're wrong. And then you got to go back and figure why did they not they didn't get it. They didn't understand what I was saying. It doesn't mean that the thought's not funny. I just thought they'd get there faster or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. For whatever reason, I didn't convey it clearly enough to them for them to get the same joke that I thought. Okay. So if you were to go back at the beginning of your comedy career and tell yourself some chunk of advice, what would it be?
Oh, wow. It's a terrific question. I would say, it's funny because I'd want to talk to myself for days just to save myself time, but it would be, maybe, I was going to say, listen more early on. It's not that I wasn't listening, and I mean to everything, to listening to the other comics at the open mics, good and bad, listening to going to see shows of people that already know what they're doing, watching the specials, watching late night sets, which I did do a lot of, but it took me maybe 6 months to really understand that was almost as important as going and doing an open mic, is just understanding what does a real joke sound like? What is it structured like? Because there's a period of time where I got to a point where I started transcribing late night sets and really analyzing jokes of other comics that I loved to understand how to try to like almost come up with this story about how they might have thought of it. Like I'd look at the joke and be like, I wonder which piece of it they thought, if they thought of that part first, how would they have gotten from, like, if they thought of the punchline first, how would they have gotten back to how they set it up? Or did they think of the setup first? Or if that actually happened to me, how did they figure out that next part? And is there like a way that you can use that information about how you just thought, like how you just guessed sort of, and I might, by the way, I might never have gotten it right in terms of how someone thought of something, but it doesn't matter because what I thought of was a way they could have thought of it, which then allows me to think of something that I think might be kind of funny. And I sort of apply the same logic in a different thing.
That is a cool idea. It's almost like reverse engineering it. And then, even if it's not the same material, you can apply whatever function that you've developed to back it out to a new joke idea to get into something or to develop something.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually just did that with the joke this morning, in a very simple way, and I'm not sure what. Well, I'm just looking for the original joke that I did it to, and I think it was it was Ronan Hirschberg, who's a hysterical comedian. It was just a tweet, and he tweeted, "The goose step makes the Nazis the most evil group to have their own choreography." And I thought that's a very funny tweet to me. But then I just thought, I thought to myself, could I have ever thought of that? And what I realized is if you took something that you wanted to talk about, like it's literally in my notebook right here. So it's like, okay, Nazis, that's the topic. Then if you listed everything about Nazis and you're like, evil, bad, Hugo Boss uniforms, goose step, and you're like, oh, goose step, that's funny. What is the goose step to the Nazis? It's a move. It's choreography. Like I was trying to figure out how you would have. And look, he may just have thought of it all at once without ever doing some sort of weird formulaic thing. But then it becomes like a writing exercise where I want to use that, like pick a topic, list everything, pick one of those things and try and connect it back to the topic with something that's not, and I'll try it later today, probably with something that's not Nazis. I'll just think of something else. Like it could be global warming. It could be whatever, maybe I'll pick something that connects to a joke I already have. Because then it's more interesting. If I find something funny, I might be able to like plug it in somewhere. But I do those kinds of things all the time just to try to find a way to write in a more targeted way that I hope will be more productive.
That's brilliant. Like I could see, now knowing so much more about you and your analytical mind, at least that's the story we've created kind of here. You really are applying that directly to the art of writing.
Right. Then sometimes you just walk into the subway and you think of a joke and it just works. And you're like, well, that was easy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why am I spending all this time with this other crap?
Yeah. Sometimes you got to work for the muse, and other times she's just like, you know what? Here's a bone. I'll throw you one.
Yep.
It's good to have.
And there's some people I would love that I don't know that I would love to just be able to be like, I want to know exactly how you thought of that.
Yeah.
And I bet you a lot of the time is I just kind of did, like it was from my life and I did it. It just happened that this thing in my life just fit a joke framework perfectly. And then I only had to tweak a little bit here and a little bit there. And I'm like, yeah, okay. All right.
No.
Damn, I wish there was something more, but there's no like one way, right? It's just tricks to get your brain going. Like even what I just described, I might not I could do global warming, make a 2-page list of things and find nothing. But and then all of a sudden think of a joke about like teacups that I might never have thought of, but for some reason, something else made my brain go there just because I got the engine running.
Right. Yeah. That's a great idea. Like at least you distracted your brain long enough to kind of chip out something that you can then make use of. Yeah.
And then there's other ones where I think I have a really funny idea and a connection and I try it every day for months in a different way. And I can never get people to like, I can't crack the code yet on.
Yeah.
And that's just other jokes are like that, I guess.
The struggle is real.
Or some jokes that aren't even funny on paper. That to me, that's the one that I haven't figured out at all yet. And I think that's because you have to, maybe I just don't have the experience yet, or like enough of a commitment or belief in like a persona. But there are some jokes that kill on stage, and I die laughing. And then I go home and I transcribe it. It's not
Right.
and it's not funny, but
No.
it is funny. And that's, to me, like, that's this puzzle that I have yet to understand. I don't think I have jokes like that are just funny, but they're not on paper, you know?
Yeah.
Some people-
I think that's like part of the goal, where it's almost like your material and your persona are like in such perfect harmony.
Yeah, you're just funny. You're just funny. Like, and that's, maybe that's a gift that not every comic gets. Maybe I'm just more of a word guy, and I'm not ever going to discover that. But I have such an affinity for the people that because we know this, you see a lot of comedy, it becomes harder and harder to laugh yourself because you're analyzing everything you're seeing in real time. You're not experiencing it in the same way as like just a pure fan. But sometimes someone gets on stage and I just start laughing, and it's just funny to me. And I don't always know why. And that's, to me, that there's something like beautiful about that when someone can do that.
It really is. It's like watching perfection when you just start chuckling.
Like, you ever see the people that walk on stage and the audience just starts laughing and giggling and they haven't even said anything yet?
I know. There's like there's
an anticipation that they're going to be funny.
Yeah.
And it's like, how did that happen? That's amazing.
Oh my God. All right, let's wrap it up here. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you.
Oh, me too.
And I can't wait to see you again. I still, every time I see you, I think you're doing new material now, so you don't do this joke, but I still laugh so hard every single time you do the cigarettes joke. Like your friend, was it your friend's mom or whatever?
It's my mom. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Pot smoking.
That gets me every single time. Where do people follow you? Where can they?
Instagram at adam.muller, but it's spelled Muller.
Okay.
That's the best
and you're
place.
On TikTok too, right?
Yeah, same adam.muller on TikTok as well.
I started following you a couple of days ago, and I feel like every single new thing that keeps popping up on my feed is like Adam Muller. I'm like, I know that guy. I know.
It's weird how it does that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
It's like, hey, you just started following him. You want to see more?
That algorithm is a mystery.
Yeah. All right, man. So we can follow you. Let's see. Instagram, adam.muller, TikTok, adam.muller. This has been so much fun, dude. Thank you so much for coming on and
thanks for having me.
Past. All right.
Hope this never gets out.
I hope
just kidding.
It'll be just between you and me.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'll let you go. But yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it. I'll let you know when it goes live. It'll probably be like a week from now, I think.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I'll definitely, if there's something I'll share it or whatever. I'll promote my life story. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the origin story, man.
Wait till the book comes out.
Exactly. Well, that's the idea. It's like, I wanted to get you here before you're too famous to have time for this kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. The book will be called Caught Smoking.
That's right. All right, man. Have a good afternoon.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.